Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. People didn't know that I brought the dead back to life every day. I was a doctor and at the same time, a liar. With one red stamp a person came back to life. With one line of black ink a life ended. Today, too, I wrote recoverable on the form. But in that ward, there was already no one left. I was an internal medicine doctor at a small military hospital in North Hamgyong. That hospital always smelled of cold air and blood. In winter, frost formed on the inside of the windows. In summer, mold covered the walls. There weren't many doctors and medicines were always short. Syringes were reused 3 times, and bandages were boiled, dried, and used again. Every morning meeting began with the same slogan: "The medicine of the motherland is the glory of the people." When the slogan ended, we all lowered our heads. No one smiled. That sentence wasn't truth, it was an order. I was more used to correcting reports than treating patients. I sat in the office longer than in the ward. Diagnosis templates piled up on my desk, and the red stamp always sat in ink. Recoverable, condition good, discharge planned. Those phrases weren't medical judgments, they were political expressions. My superior, hospital director Comrade Park, always said, "Truth does not begin in medicine. Truth comes down from the party." His voice was firm, and I nodded. Nodding was survival. That morning, another report lay before me. Name Ri Chul Min. Age 24. Diagnosis pneumonia. Condition critical. Director Park said, "This has to be sent up. He's from People's Army 17th Division." I swallowed. "When is the death report due?" "There is no death report." He handed me a pen. "Bring him back." I knew exactly what that meant. Ri Chul Min had already died. But on the report I had to write recovering. I gripped the pen. My fingertips trembled, yet the letters came out neat. Before the ink dried, the red stamp came down. That stamp was stronger than death. He lived again inside the document. All that day I avoided his bed in the ward. An empty bed looked at me like an eye. At night, the fluorescent light at the end of the corridor flickered. I opened the window. Cold air came in. My breathing sounded too loud inside it. Bring him back. That word kept turning in my head. Whom, why, and how was I bringing back? The next day, after the report was sent, the director looked pleased. "Well done, comrade. The higher-ups are satisfied." He patted my shoulder. His hand came down heavy. That afternoon another diagnosis sheet landed on my desk. This time, a female soldier named Kim Hai-sun. Diagnosis malnutrition. Cause unknown. The result line was empty. Director Park said, "This time, kill her." I stiffened. "Sir? Sometimes we bring them back, sometimes we kill them. This time the order is to kill." He smiled. The correct diagnosis always comes down from above. That night I went home and washed my hands for a long time. I scrubbed until the soap smell disappeared, but my fingertips were still cold. On the desk lay a notebook. Inside were my notes. Temp 35.9, weak pulse, irregular breathing. And one line added below. The temperature of the diagnosis and the temperature of the truth are different. Days later, Kim Hai-sun's family stood at the hospital door. They didn't believe the death notice. "You said she was fine just yesterday." I couldn't answer. Her mother went to her knees in front of me. "Doctor, is it really the end?" I lowered my head. "I don't know. That was the truth. All I knew was that truth was always weaker than orders." After that, the corridors grew quieter. Patients saved their words, nurses avoided eyes. Diagnosis forms kept piling up, the stamp came down more often. I wrote faster and faster. When I wrote fast, I thought less. Only when thought stopped could my hand move. At night, in the dark hospital, I sorted reports. 1 sheet, 2 sheets, 3. When a sheet blew off in a draft, I reached out without thinking. As if grabbing something. If I didn't grab it, I felt I would disappear. That winter I had my first dream. In it, patients walked out of the ward holding my reports. They were all smiling. But in their eyes, letters were reflected. Recoverable. That word shone back on my face. I woke up. My breath was tight. And then I realized I was not a doctor treating patients. Ri Chol Min's name was still at the top of the ward roster. His bed was empty, but his temperature chart and diagnosis remained. A nurse asked me carefully, "Doctor, shall we mark him discharged?" I paused. "No, he's recovering." She nodded, but her eyes wavered. There was a question inside them. "Is he really?" I answered by picking up my pen. I carved letters into paper. Recovering. The words soaked into my heart like ink. A few days later, the Ministry of Public Health sent an inspection team. If the number of forms and the number of beds didn't match, it wasn't a simple mistake, it was a political defect. We didn't call it an error. We called it a defect. Defects ended not with correction, but removal. An inspector stood before my desk. "Where is Comrade Ri Chol Min?" "In isolation." "Condition?" "Recovering." He raised his head. "I also heard he died." I swallowed. "That's a false rumor." He stared at me for a moment. His eyes skimmed the ink on my fingers. "Rumors are a bad disease. They must be cured." He smiled and closed the file. Until his smile left, I couldn't breathe. That evening the director pushed a cup toward me. "Good work. Praise will come down from above." His voice was wet, the cup had no aroma. I didn't take it. "Not like you, doctor. In this country, lies aren't a crime. Truth is the crime." He drained the cup and looked at me. "They say doctors save lives. Here, we save reports." He smiled. The quiet of that smile scared me more. Days later, Ri Chol Min's mother came to the hospital. She wore a worn overcoat and carried a lunchbox wrapped in fine cloth. "Doctor, is my Chol Min eating well?" I bit my lip. Right now eating is difficult. "He's recovering." Her eyes brightened. "So he's alive?" I nodded. Her face lit up. That light pierced my chest. After she left, a nurse asked softly, "Is he really alive?" I didn't answer. She said, "This isn't saving, it's burying." That sentence circled in my head for a long time. At night, the hospital was quiet like a ghost city. The ceiling lights flickered, cold air slipped through wall cracks. I walked the empty ward. Name tags hung at each bed. And some belonged to people no longer in this world. Their temperature charts were still updated daily. Someone wrote 36.5 every day. In this country, even death had to keep a temperature. I sat at my desk and opened the files. Condition stable. Heart rate normal. The ink was steady. Every patient was recovering at once. On paper, the hospital was a place of miracles. I was the attending physician of those miracles. One day a stranger appeared in the hospital. He wore a state security uniform. "Doctor, a moment." His voice was low, his face hard. He picked up a file from my desk. "Ri Chol Min." "Yes." "Is he alive?" "Yes." "Recovering." He looked at my face for a long time. "They say he's dead." My fingertips turned cold. "Headquarters ordered recovering." He paused, then folded the paper. "Orders are life, then." It wasn't mockery, it was confirmation. After he left, I sank into my chair. Breathing was hard. The stack of forms on my desk felt like hands around my throat. That night I couldn't go home. At the end of the corridor, a nurse called me. "Doctor, look at the door." A lunchbox sat on the threshold. A note was stuck on top. "Please feed him a little more today." It was from Ri Chol Min's mother. I brought it into the office. When I opened it, a piece of meat lay on cold rice. There was the smell of meat. My hand trembled at the smell. Real life was here, and the life in my report was ink. After that, I rewrote the reports every dawn. At night as ordered, at dawn by conscience. 2 versions of each diagnosis were born. One with a red stamp. And one hidden in my drawer, my truthful copy. That paper bore only my name, no seal. Worthless to the system, but to me it was medicine's last shape. But secrets don't last long. One day the director opened my drawer. "What is this?" My copy was in his hand. My breath stopped. Practice. Practice? He looked down at the sheet. Why are the names of the dead in your practice? His eyes were cold. This is not diagnosis. It's a confession. The words exploded in my ear. And that day my name went on a list. Subject to investigation, suspected record discrepancy. That night the corridor was cold again. The light flickered, the door at the end stood half open. I walked toward it. It was Ri Chul Min's room. The bed was still empty. But his name tag was still there. I couldn't take it off. When my fingertips touched it, tears fell. On the chart it still said recovering. Before dawn I picked up my pen and wrote a new sentence. Recovering. Below it, in letters so small no one would read them. A doctor saves a patient with lies and kills himself with truth. Investigations never begin suddenly. As always, they grow like a shadow behind daily life. First a phone call, then a single approval sheet, and finally a low voice saying my name. Record discrepancy, let's verify. Polite words that erased any way back. The investigation team had 2 members. A middle-aged man with a notepad, and a young woman with an old camera around her neck. They scanned the files, then walked the wards, and finally looked at my hands. Small nicks, ink stains, pigment under my nails. The woman took photos. The shutter cracked like a dried twig in the corridor. Doctor, do you keep any separate records at night? The man with the notepad asked. I shook my head. He looked at me a long time. Good if not. If so, a harmful habit. His tone was blank, but harmful clung to my skin. That afternoon the director summoned me. Medals hung on the wall behind his desk, wind pushed through the window frame. He set out 2 glasses and filled only one. Stop burning. I steadied my breath. Burning what? Those copies you write at night. You have them, yes? I didn't answer. He smiled. It's fine that a doctor loves writing. But love needs the right time and place. He drained the glass and tapped the bottom with his finger. Tonight is good. The wind blows east. Not a suggestion, an order. At dusk the hospital sank back into long silence. The stove went cold, and the corridor light flickered 3 times. I took the keys and went down to the records room. Steel cabinets slept with reports stacked like seasons. Deaths recorded as alive. Lives recorded as dead, the suspended sentence called recovering. From the lowest drawer I pulled a thin bundle. My truthful copies in my own hand. I lifted one sheet. Ri Chul Min, time of death 0217, treatment note missing, family notice withheld. The ink remembered the temperature of my hand. The paper trembled like skin. Suddenly the back door creaked. A guard's footsteps soaked into the corridor, then faded. Breath returned. I struck a match. The flame was small, my fingers were cold. When I brought it close, the paper curled slowly. The ink cried first. As the letters lost shape, the sentence stopped screaming. I burned the first page. I picked up a second, but the match went out. Darkness rushed back. In that instant a thin scrap of song brushed through the crack of the door. Bring him back. It wasn't the tone of orders or the low hum of paper. It was the air of the empty bed I'd avoided. I set the second page down. My fingers lingered on it. Burn it. A familiar voice behind me. I turned. A nurse stood there, night shift clothes, surgical mask, tired eyes. She looked back and forth between me and the paper. If you leave it, you will disappear. Not cruel, exact. I couldn't strike the match. She took it, lit the flame. I'll do it. I froze. She held the fire to the edge, then stopped. But someone has to remember. She blew the flame out. What remained was the smell of singe and corners unburned. We decided not to use fire. We would change the light instead. I pulled a small brazier from the corner and set the charcoal only half alight. Not a blaze, but ashen light. Light that didn't draw eyes. Before it we bound the papers again. Not erasing completely, not leaving whole. I swapped covers, changed page counts, mixed the dates. Record was no longer a single place. Memory, Pockets, under teacups, in socks, the double bottoms of drawers, and the pupils of a few people. We broke sentences into pieces and scattered them among people. Living documents, reports that move. Near midnight the security man appeared again. He didn't turn on a light. "Doctor, walk." His steps were steady, my heartbeat wasn't. We went to the coal shed behind the hospital. He lit a cigarette without a word. A red point lifted in the dark. "Wind's east tonight." I said nothing. "Wind is good. It carries smells." He drew once more, nudged ash with his toe. The smell of burning paper goes quickly. Not a check, not a threat. He put the cigarette out. "One question, doctor." He looked at me. "How far is medicine still medicine?" I exhaled. "As far as it saves a person." He nodded. "And a report?" I couldn't answer. He offered the faintest smile. "A report erases a person." Toward dawn a nurse swung a flashlight in the corridor. A brief arc rose and vanished on the ceiling. We returned to the records room. 3 bundles remained. 1 for me, 1 for her, and 1 for no one. That third had to leave the hospital. I opened my coat and slid the pages into the pocket by my heart. Against skin, my heartbeat changed rhythm. Proof of life or warning of discovery. At the morning meeting the director looked calm. "The inspection ends soon. Everyone keep your posts." His voice was stable but his eyes moved fast. Afterward he called me alone. "The wind blew east last night, I hear." I looked at him quietly. He smiled. "Still, the smell remains." He leaned in and whispered, "Doctor, ash gray is proof of what didn't burn. A warning and a blueprint for an alibi." That afternoon, Ri Chol Min's mother left another lunch. "Please feed him more today." Same note as yesterday, the pressure of the brush deeper. I couldn't open the box. Each grain of rice looked like a letter from my copies. I set it beside the brazier. I took out 1 sheet and wrote in tiny letters, "Recovering this sentence destroys me." I folded it and slid it under the lunchbox. The warmth of the rice covered the words. They grew warm, and warm words last longer. At dusk the young female investigator came again with her camera. She paused on the threshold. Just a few more shots. She photographed cabinet numbers and the angles of the covers with care. Turning to leave, she said quietly, "Doctor." I looked up. "That match went out, didn't it?" I didn't answer. She nodded very slowly. "Extinguished flames are remembered better." She left. The afterimage of the shutter lingered in the dark. At night the nurse handed me a small envelope. From the double bottom of my drawer, by the look of it. Inside were 3 lines. First, the same letters written by different hands. Second, the same date left in different places. Third, the same truth divided among 3 mouths. At the bottom, 1 more word. Amen. The handwriting wasn't mine, nor the hospital's. I folded the envelope and tucked it against my chest. Paper and heart shared a temperature. On the last round I didn't snuff the brazier completely. A faint glow lived. After inspectors came, the glow was gone. A mark of someone's hand. Still, a corner of paper unburned. And settled between them, ash gray. I stared at that gray a long time. Not fire, not ash. The color that lingers between lie and truth. The light we made between medicine and reports. Dawn came slowly. The window at the corridor's end paled. I took off my gown and put on my coat. The papers by my heart crinkled and eased. I drew a single, very deep breath. Today the reports would live again, and today the patients would recover first on paper. But from today, a small warmth would remain outside the pages. As things not fully burned last long, records not fully erased would help us endure. I opened the door and stepped into the dawn ward. Cold, quiet, alive. I picked up my pen and wrote the first line slowly. Condition recovering. And in letters so small no one would see, in a place no one would read, I added. Symptom remembered by light. The broadcast that inspection was over came at dawn. Special Ministry Health Team, no irregularities anywhere. The sentence played 3 times over the hospital speakers. Nurses sighed with relief. The director smiled for the first time in a while. But the smile was strange. His fingers kept moving in his trouser pocket. I felt he still had something clenched. As the morning meeting ended, state security vehicles drove into the yard. Black bodies pressed the snow. The windows stayed shut. The director stopped smiling. They demanded reports already cleared. Final originals for re-review. That always meant something else. A record gone missing, or a new name added. A gap ran through the stack on my desk. My heart stopped. It wasn't my copy that was missing. It was an official sheet stamped in red. Ri Chol Min recovering. That document was gone. My fingers iced over. We hadn't lost a sheet of paper. We had lost proof of a state-kept death. The director called me in. "Doctor, did you move it?" "No." He stood from his chair. "Then who took it?" His voice was quiet, but the conversation felt decided. He pulled out a cigarette and bit down. In times like this there's always someone. And that someone is always already chosen. He lit up and looked me in the eye. The one who wrote the report would know best, no. That afternoon the hospital was muted. But every door at the end of the hall was open. Someone was rummaging through each office. Under desks, in drawers, inside wall seams. No place untouched by hand-searching paper. Before someone found my copy, I decided to find it first. I went down to the records room. The charcoal was cold. When I opened the cabinet doors, the smell of paper spread. Mixed with it, a different scent. Smoke. Someone had already been here. I turned over stacks. One of my 3 bundles was gone. Instead, a new sheet was tucked in. Records live longer than people. The sentence in typeset. I didn't know who left it, when, or why. That night a nurse knocked on the ward door. "Doctor, someone's searching for the report. Security is checking rooms." I took off my gown and put on my coat. With each step the dust under my shoes thudded. People gave my shoulder space. Not fear, calculation. The distance to survive. Near the coal shed behind the hospital someone called my name. A voice I didn't know. He stepped out of the dark. A state security investigator. "Doctor." Fatigue ran through his tone. "A report has gone missing." "Yes." "Strange, no?" "Yes. But the strange thing may not be the report, but the person." He didn't smile. "Who wrote that report?" "I did." "Then who would have taken it?" I couldn't answer. He looked at me a moment, then took out a cigarette. "Got a light?" "No." "Good, then." He snapped the cigarette and put it back. "If there's no fire, evidence won't burn." That night I couldn't go home. The hospital was already inside the line of surveillance. I sat in my office and closed my eyes. Radio, light, wind all stopped. In my head, Ri Chol Min's mother's face. "He's alive, right?" The question came again. I answered myself. "He's alive, but only in the document." Around 2 a.m., a small light moved in the corridor. A nurse. She handed me an envelope. "Found it." I opened it. Inside was the copy I had hidden. She whispered, "What security took was the real report. Not your truth, what the system made." I was speechless. She added, "When that one disappears, things quiet down here for a while." I looked at her. "Then what are we protecting?" "Silence," she said. After she left, I opened the envelope. The edge of the paper was slightly damp. The ink had bled, but the words remained. "Truth, even buried, does not disappear." Not my handwriting. Someone had written over my words. I folded the paper again and slipped it into the inside pocket by my heart. There was still heat there. By morning, the director was gone. No one asked why. A new superior sorted the files and said, "Records are a great heritage. Keep them well." He pressed a red stamp into my hand. The ink was thick. "You're the one in charge now." Not congratulations warning. I sat at the desk and lifted my pen. On a new report the top line read, "Cause of death pulmonary disease." Reporter Doctor. I pressed the nib. The ink soaked the paper. Below it, in letters very small, I added, "Diagnostician alive." Night fell and the corridor lights went off. The hospital went back into darkness. I closed the file and whispered, "Today I didn't kill anyone." That was my last prayer of the day. After that, the hospital grew calm again. Children's cries returned to the corridor. The smell of medicine filled the air. Life seemed to go back to normal, but the eyes were different. Everyone felt it a little. This hospital no longer had only diagnosis. It had memory. I still wrote reports. Every morning the same lines, same stamp, same signature. But at the very bottom there was always a different sentence. Tiny, thin, where no one could read it. My line. Truth is like body heat. The more you hide it, the more it remains. Each dawn the nurse did her rounds. Her steps were still quiet, her gaze steady. Sometimes we tended the same patient and met eyes for a moment. In that brief moment warmth touched our fingertips. Not fear, but proof of alliance. Once, a child patient died. Pneumonia. That day I wrote on the certificate. Recovering. My hand shook. The child's mother gripped my arm. "Doctor, what will happen to my child?" Her gaze was clearer than water and sharper than a knife. I bowed my head instead of answering. She didn't cry. "It's all right. I know." With that one sentence, every line collapsed. She carried the child out. Snow settled on her back. That night I took the certificate out and set it on fire. As the letters burned, I wept. The paper turned black, but the ink lasted to the end. Days later a new security officer arrived. Young, not talkative. He skimmed the files and asked, "Why is it so quiet?" I looked up. "What do you mean?" "This hospital's patients die, but all the reports live." He didn't smile. "When too many things live, they rot." A warning, but I heard a paradox. What lives, changes. And change means it isn't over yet. That night the nurse handed me a small box. From Ri Chul Min's mother. Inside was a lunch tin. On the lid, brush letters. "Doctor, don't forget that child's name." I closed my eyes. The firelight from last winter flashed in my mind. That flame had a smell. Not ash human. Only then did I know truth always has a temperature. Next day I organized the list of the dead in the ward. In the status line I wrote the same sentence for all. Temperature maintained. Medically false. But to me, the most accurate diagnosis. The names of the dead weren't forgotten. Their warmth stayed in my fingers, and those fingers moved the pen again. Soon, citywide enforcement began. Security officers were stationed in every hospital. Every file was inspected twice. Oddly, no one touched mine. As if someone had covered them in advance. My sheets alone bore the stamp approved. That night the nurse said, "Doctor, maybe that young investigator is shielding you." I nodded. Why would she? Maybe she saw a flame that hasn't gone out. Her words scattered quietly. The smaller the flame, the longer it lives. That stuck in my head. Winter came again. Frost on the glass, coal dust back in the hall. I still wrote diagnoses, but now I wrote differently. Under the patient's name, instead of the disease, I recorded a life. Kim Un-ha likes singing. Ri Chul Min not afraid of wind. Not reporting, but memorial. And someday, not records, but worship. That evening the nurse asked me, "Doctor, why are you still here?" I smiled. "Someone has to keep the warmth." She nodded. "Then I'll keep the light." We touched fingertips briefly. Short, sure heat. I still write certificates. The stamp is still red, the ink still wet. But the sentence changed. Instead of recovering, remembering. And below, very small. This record remains as body heat. At dawn when the window's pale. I put down my pen and look at my fingers. Stained with ink, still warm. That warmth was someone's life. Someone's confession. I whisper. Today, with one line of falsehood, I kept one life's truth. As the light grows, the dark shrinks. Now I know. Medicine is the work of saving people. And truth is the work of leaving people behind. And the lines I've left. When someone someday reads them, they will no longer be reports. But testimony. I don't sign anymore. The stamp now sits in someone else's hand. Even if that hand imitates my writing, it doesn't matter. Truth doesn't stay in the script, it stays in the heat of the hand. First snow falls in the yard. It piles quietly, no footprints are left. People still weep holding diagnosis sheets. Some crumpled them into a pocket. Some read them longer than a newspaper. I watch their hands. The ink stains look alike. The radio still says the same news. The national health system safeguards the people's lives. When I hear it, I set down the pen. There is still paper on the desk. But they are no longer reports. They are small grave markers holding someone's warmth. The paper is light, the heart is heavy. One day I opened the window. Cold wind came in, the edge of a sheet trembled. Then a touch of sunlight fell. The ink reflected, making a small pattern. Like a flame, like a breath. Truth wasn't fire. It couldn't be burned away like fire. Nor stopped like breath. On my way home I walked along the wall. Small even footprints ran over the snow. No one there, yet the prints faced me. I stared a long time and whispered, "You're alive," and addressed to someone with no name and no face. At home, dust had settled on my teacup. I didn't wipe it off. Dust is a record, too. Under it still lay a single sheet. Remembering, the ink hadn't faded, the letters hadn't lost their warmth. Now I know. Truth is not something written, but something endured. The hand that writes the names of the dead keeps beating the hearts of the living in their place. The faint heat still left in my fingers. That must be the proof. So today, too, I pick up my pen. I don't stamp. I write one line instead. Today, no one disappeared. That is my daily report. Not the state's record, but my own diagnosis. The light flickers. The darkness outside stretches long. I slowly close my eyes. The letters on the paper are still warm. As long as that warmth doesn't go out, I am still alive.